Grab your coffee and join me, Nicoa, for a caffeinated conversation about life. I'll be talking to people who have chosen to walk their own paths and, just like me, are creating a life by design. I hope it will give you the inspiration you need to do exactly the same. Bonjour, monsieur.
Hola, senora. I actually took Spanish in high school, so...
Well, I did take French, so you'd think I would have gotten the ability to pronounce Travis Pomerleau appropriately, but thank you for guiding me right before we started here on Coffee with Nicoa. Hey, Travis, welcome.
Well, welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You know, I was talking to my son this morning who does a lot of events, kind of like you were doing at the Wilmington Coffee Fest. And he said to me last night, he had this thing in Raleigh. He sells artwork and stickers and sculptures that he's created. He's an artist. And he said, you never know who you're going to connect with. He goes, this woman might be giving me this tool that I need. And I met her at the event last night. And I said, two people I'm talking with today, I met volunteering at Wilmington Coffee Fest.
It's such an interesting, tree with its branches, because you're exactly right. And it's like, for me, I was an engineer my whole life up until this past year, right? So everything was scheduled, everything was disciplined. I knew what I was doing. And this year is flying by the seat of my pants. I never know what's going to happen next. I never know who I'm going to meet. I never know what brainstorming and mind melding. It's wild.
It is wild. And that's exactly one of the reasons that attracted me to you during the event. You know, I'm running around taking coffees to the judges, and I took advantage, as you recall, of the opportunity to hand my podcast business card out.
I remember.
I wasn't even sure. I didn't know who I'd hand it to, but you were talking to a couple right in front of me. And they were tasting your coffee, and they asked you how long you'd been doing it. And you said, you know what? I'm about to throw caution to the wind, and I'm going to do this full time. And I got my card out. I was like, oh, he's my guy. He's my example of a life by design, and that's what I hope we can talk a little bit about today is that feeling. So tell us a little bit about that decision to just throw caution to the wind.
Yeah. So, with lack of a lot of talking, I think everybody's been through COVID and what influence it's had on their lives and career, whatever that may be. And me always being in corporate America, I'm not a dummy, and you can sense things a lot of times. And so I just had a gut feeling that at the end of the year, beginning of the year, headwinds might be blowing in an awkward direction. And I had no prior knowledge. I didn't know anything.
And you know what, Travis? I realized we didn't tell everybody what you do.
Yeah. So, historically, I've been an electrical engineer or an engineering manager, both. And today, now, I actually have a little bit of rental property, but my big adventure has been, I've always done it as a hobby, side fun thing, but starting a coffee roasting company and becoming a coffee roaster. And this year is going to be make or break for me. We'll see what happens.
I think it's going to be awesome. I just want to let everybody know that you gave me some awesome coffee when we met. We met for coffee, duh.
We did.
Coffee lovers do. And you gave me this Papua New Guinea, and I wanted you to know that I'm having a cup right now. And I had some for breakfast as well.
That's delish. I actually have my not so limited edition new coffee mugs. And I just roasted the first batch. I got a brand new Mexican Swiss water processed decaf.
Wow.
It's really good. I'm happy with it. We're throwing caution to the wind. Rewinding. So I kind of had a gut feeling that some things may change. And, mid-January, traditional time after Christmas time to get laid off. And I did.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And I'm very much a person who's a lot about stability, both financially and knowing what's happening. So that was, it was a big gut check, but I'd say maybe a month and a half, I started to mentally and kind of prepare myself mentally and in my gut. And I started putting a few small seeds in the ground for myself personally, financially, business, rental property, all together. And I said, well, I'm going to put the last bit of water and fertilizer on these things, these seeds, and see what happens. And here
Had you
I
been
am.
planting these seeds all along? I mean, was there this voice inside of your head that said, if I wasn't an engineer, I'd go roast coffee? I mean, maybe tell us a little bit about that inspiration.
Sure, I have a few of those. Part of me is to live off grid in Hawaii, maybe, and just not have to make a lot of money and just live. Part of it, I'm always fascinated by the human psyche and how it works. And maybe if I were to do it again, I would do psychology, sociology. Maybe I would be a botanist or something to do with trees and nature. Roasting coffee is obviously on there. And I learned from my dad and my granddad to be very handy, hands-on, woodworking, remodeling. So I stay busy.
Yes. So you've had these, dreams, and we all do.
Yes.
And I was going to tell you, you're only 45. You can still do all those things you just listed, by the way.
We can do them all. We can do them all.
Yeah, you don't have to wait till the next lifetime. I'm serious. I've seen a lot of people make massive changes, and you going from engineering to coffee making. I mean, tell us that little story. I think you said something about your brother or brother-in-law had encouraged you.
Let me start from the very beginning. I didn't drink coffee until I was 24. And it was a great excuse to take 10 minutes during the day because they had free coffee in the break room where I worked. And it was like, in the beginning. And then after a year, I decided I really liked it. It's the taste. It's a ritual. It kind of gives you a little space in the morning. But, I wasn't huge into it. And then funny enough with the Papua New Guinea, I grew up in upstate New York and didn't move until I was 35 to here. And I walked in when I was in my mid-20s to a small little shop that a guy had been open 2 weeks. And it was Utica, New York. It was Utica Coffee Roasters. And he told me a tiny story of his dad passed, left him this little building. He was another engineer, same age as me, married. And he couldn't financially keep the building if he didn't do something with it. So within 2 weeks, he went on eBay, took vacation, bought a used coffee roaster, and put it in there, and away he went. And he taught me a little bit about roasting on a medium-sized industrial machine. Man, it stuck with me. But he kind of blonde roasted one bag of Papua New Guinea that I took home. And man, did that make an impression on me, pardon me.
Yeah.
And there you are drinking some of my Papua New Guinea.
and of course, I'm drinking it black. I didn't put anything in it. I wanted to make sure I appreciated the full-on taste. And that's great because you had kind of a role model, too. Somebody that had just kind of off the cuff made that decision.
Not far off for me. Two things to compliment what you said about my brother. So I let maybe a decade or better go by, corporate America, being afraid to take a risk and a financial and time and effort risk. And my brother and his wife were doing reasonably well financially at the time and still are. And my brother had bought a little tabletop roaster, a little electric Bimor is the brand name. And he gifted me one because he knew I liked coffee roasting. And so you can only roast a pound at a time. It takes 20, 25, 30 minutes a batch. And I learned how, made some mistakes, had some successes. And I randomly, over 4 years ago, put in for a spot at the downtown farmers market here in Wilmington. And I got a spot. I was like, holy crap. Okay. So I here I am with a 1 pound machine, and I was selling, I was every other weekend at the time. And I was selling 40, 45 pounds every market, maybe 50 on a good weekend. And but to do the math, I was 30 minutes a batch at 1 pound. And I did this for the first year. I was seeing somebody at the time, and I was on nights and weekends roasting 30 minutes back to back to back just to make volume. So I took every penny I saved that first year, and I took another risk that scared the crap out of me. I went on one of these Chinese sites. AliExpress is one, and Alibaba is another one.
Yeah.
And it's like the Amazon of America. Yep. And all said, done, duty taxes, I was around 10 grand for buying this about 30-pound industrial machine. I had 4 months where I had no idea if the whole thing was going to happen or not.
Wow.
I was in the middle of COVID when the ports got clogged, and it was a nightmare to get through customs. My shipping went from 400 to 1,500, like, for no reason.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't know if it was going to end. And one day I got a call from the warehouse and said, it's there, pick it up on the trailer. I was like, oh my God, it's so cool.
I bet you spent a lot of sleepless nights though over that time frame worrying, like, what have I done?
I'd say at 2 months and 3 months, I went in a couple shifts, and then the last couple of weeks when I knew it was on the way, a lot of sleep was lost.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now this is the whole time. This is after you got laid off. You had already started trying to make this happen, and
well, so no, I got laid off in the beginning of this year. I'd had the big roaster for
okay.
2. Yeah, so I had the big roaster for a couple years already. But me being in corporate America and trying to live a little bit of life, I've kept the business small. Just the farmers markets, a local shop had picked me up a little bit, and some internet order. And I was scared to grow, and I had.
Why do you think you were scared to grow? What was it that caused you to be afraid? Hey guys, we interrupt this regularly scheduled caffeinated conversation to fuel your ongoing coffee addiction. I have the owner and CEO of Wilmington Coffee Roasters here with me, Travis Pomerleau.
I'm so honored to not only be a Coffee with Nicoa guest, but also a new sponsor. I love coffee, so I founded Wilmington Coffee Roasters in 2020 to share it with the world. If you want the best coffee of your life, head right on over to WilmingtonCoffeeRoasters.com. And if you still happen to be listening, be sure to use coupon code Coffee with Nicoa, all one word, for a nifty 10% off at checkout.
Thank you, Travis. And everybody, after you buy your coffee, don't forget to follow Wilmington Coffee Roasters on Facebook and Instagram. Now, back to your regularly scheduled caffeinated conversation.
I'd say I always want to make sure people are satisfied and happy, and I don't ever want to dissatisfy somebody or create an issue with a customer. So I have a little fear around that. I have a fear around financial and time risk and not being able to put food on the table, et cetera, et cetera. So stability is important. And doing something I never did, all the things, Nicoa.
Yeah.
And stability is big for me. So it's scary.
What would you tell yourself now, that younger version of you, even though it was a few years back, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, I would have taken the risk earlier and lived in an adventure earlier. I really would have.
Why?
Because you strangely, when you take the risk, even though you may have less income or less, spending money or whatever, the adventure and the satisfaction in meeting people, the connections, the mental, emotional rewards, it's just all worth it. It just, and you don't know until you go through it.
It really is freeing, isn't it?
It is.
It's freeing. And at the same time, there are moments of terror.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been there. I don't know why I would still have these moments of fear. If I could give any advice to someone that's just starting out. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years.
I saw that.
And I'm still, every once in a while, I'm like, holy crap, I hope I get another client soon. Or, now I'm also going through a divorce. So that kind of threw a little wrench in the whole mechanics of this life by design. But, we get thrown these curveballs. You're not going to go through life and not get thrown the curveballs. But I'll tell you, when you're on your own, you have a lot more control than you might think you have. Because when you're handcuffed to the corporate world, sometimes you're just pinned, man. You're just stuck. I call them the golden handcuffs in some cases.
You are. It's a double-edged sword. You probably will always have food on the table and keep the temperature in your house where you want it. But you may not be completely satisfied emotionally,
Yeah.
You may not be. And divorces are a curveball. I've been through one some years back, and money is very, very, very tight. So yeah.
It's funny that you said that about the temperature. I'm going to laugh because I've just got to tell you, I just got my Duke energy bill and I was like, oh man, keeping that thermostat on eco is helpful.
It really is. And I used to run very warm all the time. And so I wanted the house at like 71 or 72 for the air conditioning. And I've trained myself. Maybe I'm getting a little older. I've lost a tiny bit of weight. But I keep it at 77 now, and it's not bad, and it helps with the energy.
You're right. And that's exactly where it is right now. It's like 76, 77, and I was thinking, I'm kind of getting used to this. This is kind of nice. I'm okay. Now,
it is.
The temperature did just change seasonally here, but it's still going to be 84 today. I don't know why this is. You know what? The reason this is a topic is because this is an example of what people freak out about when they do go out on their own. And I can imagine people might be listening to us going, no, not going to have to worry about my temperature.
Nicoa, that's a deep, deep emotional topic because the immediate worries and stresses and OCD obsessions, if you don't work through the years to train yourself and try to develop yourself with and without the means that you do or don't have, like the patience, the steadfastness to calm yourself, the little tiny worries, the temperature in the house, paying the heat bill, those things can tear you up and make you lose sleep. And maybe it's age, maybe it's wisdom, maybe it's help and influence from other people, whether it's personal or professional lives, professional help that you even may have. Like those things teach you to sit back, have patience, look at the bigger picture. Maybe you have to let something, simmer for some weeks or months before it's going to happen or even have to worry about it. It's a trick. It really is a trick.
It's a practice. And you said it's patience and it's self-awareness. What type of practices? I know you're interested in the psyche, just like me, and that's one of the reasons I loved your responses. Travis went through and actually answered the sample questions I typically send. By the way, you're the first one that did so thoroughly. I was like, wow, because typically I'm like, heads up, we might talk about it, but I really enjoyed reading your responses. And even though we had coffee together, I learned so much more about you by your writing, even though I know you were talking to text and you were just giving me, off the cuff that day, but you spoke from the heart. What type of work have you done to really tap into your own consciousness and your self-awareness? I can tell you've done a lot of work.
A lot of things. The biggest couple things, I owe a lot of development in my younger years, and I'm maybe tearing up a tiny bit saying this to my ex-wife. She's an amazing person, and I probably started out as a teenager, young 20s, just as turmoiled and impatient and undeveloped as any young next male that would struggle with life and either listen to people and calm his butt down or work on himself or not. Enter later 20s and being married, and you realize, maybe I'm not developed to handle a lot, handle life. And at that point, I really started admiring and listening to my ex about a lot of things. And I'd say when I was 29, I stuck myself in some therapy, tried a few different things. It's definitely stuck with it. And therapy is so multifaceted, right? Like, but it can be treated to work on old things, current things, future things. It could be a weekly check-in, like all these things. And if you got to shop for therapists, because you got to find one, you identify one that you believe will develop you. It's like shopping for a spouse, right? It's
I agree.
so that's, a couple of things. What do I do on my own, Nicoa? The good things that I do on my own is I'll go to the beach sometimes. I'll go get coffee. I'll go for walks, whether it be with my dogs. Allow myself some headspace. I don't allow myself enough headspace because my method of dealing with the worries and the outlets are do something fun for the business, build something, renovating this in-law cottage I put in my backyard. There'd be a day I'd get up at 7 and work on it till I went to bed at 10, less meals, because it, there's an outlet here and I sleep good afterwards. But I probably should have taken a few hours to really decompress those days,
I know what you mean, where you tend to spend, I get confused with that too, because I think, well, I really like my work. I'm excited about, working on updating like the journal that I published last year, or, I want to rebrand. I'm working on the website, and I do question that as well. Like, I spend all day working and it's a Saturday and everybody else was out having a good time. Is that serving me or not serving me? And I still get confused sometimes, because if I'm having fun, but am I really? This is where I go to the why am I doing it? Why? Am I doing it out of fear, or am I doing it out of fun?
Maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe it serves you in waves over time. Maybe it's meant to be that way for a certain time.
Yeah, that's a really nice response. I appreciate that. I think about that too. I think, Nicoa, this is a season and it feels different than it felt for a number of reasons, But yeah, I mean, it seems like you've gone through a number of those seasons, and this year's been pretty much the kind of exclamation point on this dream. Talk a little bit about your life by design right now, and how you're being intentional about things.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a minor frame up of where I'm actually at business wise with the life by design. For that first, I literally made a couple of weeks back, I made a ongoing 15-page just list of businesses, phone numbers, addresses that I want to just blind solicit for sales. And honestly, Nicoa, I'm too small right now. I'm scared. I need to grow. And I do keep a lot of irons in the fire to life by design. I'm very intentional about I don't take huge risks. I don't take huge gambles. I'm very intentional about moving the chess pieces one square at a time and advancing forward. So life by design, I'm very intentional with putting those chess pieces in place, and I will only climb one step at a time typically. So for myself personally, I just finished this apartment and got it rented out. Well, that's Travis's self-sustaining income for a little while, and then I can go have a little fun and grow a little more. Well, this couple of weeks, I love my mom. She's getting older, but she's here from New York visiting for 2 weeks. She hasn't been here in about 5 years because of a lot of health COVID, so it's a real treat. But now these 2 weeks are, I want to sit back and focus, just relax with mom. But after that, I really need to hit the road for sales and being intentional about that and life for design there.
Well, congratulations on renting out the grandma suite or whatever you're calling it in the backyard. That when you had responded, you were like, I'm looking for a loving person. Like someone that, aligns with your values. It sounds like you might have found that person, huh?
I think so. You cannot judge books by a cover. That is something that I've immensely learned later in life. And I think this person is at a point in their life where they've grown and they want something quiet and stable and beautiful in their life. And we'll see what happens. But, I got to have that gut feeling. I just have to have it.
Talk about that. That's intuition, and trusting that. I was reflecting on that the other day for myself, and I can think of 2 core times in my life where I intentionally ignored, and I say intentionally because I could hear it, and I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to listen to that. And I think that's where my ego kind of did an override. In retrospect, I think the ego and the intuition were working together. But talk to me about your intuition and your gut. How's that working for you?
Well, there's always a balance, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, because you have your conditioning, you have your fears, you have your intellect and your analytical ability, and then you have your gut talking to you. Well, your fears and your training from your life growing up, those definitely influence your gut. So sometimes if all these different directions are coming in, you got to sit down in a chair, a little space, or on the beach or something, and maybe sleep on something and see how it feels in the morning when you wake up. So you really have to work hard at, maybe you used 2 examples that you knew, and I don't know if they were decidedly bad directions or decidedly good directions, we'll say. But
I'd say there's value in all.
that is really cool. I'm happy to hear that.
Yep.
But you have to overcome your fears and your conditioning if you think it's intellectually a good path to take.
Give me an example of where you either recall listening when you should have or not listening.
I may be in the middle of some right now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. It's minor things, it's minor things, Nicoa. A couple was like, I'm careful about money, if you haven't already picked up on that. But I got that last little bit with this apartment building, and I need to get a fence out there. I need to put a railing up, and it's just like, it's money not yet earned, but it's investment you need to make at the last minute. So I just closed my eyes, and I just calmed the nerves in my stomach and said, you got to do it. And I whipped out the credit card and I went.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's just I've never done any holiday markets for the coffee business. And I put together some gift baskets. There's an extra investment there. It's well, geez, I'm charging a little bit more than just the coffee and the coffee cups I'm putting in these things. I feel bad because I want to be fair about my pricing, but I somehow got to cover the extra prettiness, right? The baskets and whatnot. So it could be a mistake. I could crash and burn, or I could be okay and sell quite a bit. So I'll stay tuned for those. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I think my dad always told me, and most people say it, you got to spend money to make money. And when I went through this separation about 7-8 months ago, I immediately was in the process of trying to get work with another organization to be deployed as a coach.
Sure.
And I had to invest thousands of dollars in training and certifications so that I could be eligible to be a coach. And I had to do the same thing. I had to close my eyes and pull out the credit card. I was like, all right, I know this will give me work in the future. So I think our intuition supports us in those decisions. And what's the worst case scenario? Oh, well, don't get any work from that. Lost the money, got to pay it off.
Yeah. Actually, you just triggered me on another one. I just literally went up to a couple hours north to pick up a new load of coffee, which was, I don't know where your mind works. In some businesses, this is not a lot. For a business that's starting out, it's enough. It's $3,500 worth of green coffee. And slow season is coming up, and I'm just like, I need to grow. So I don't know if that one's going to pay off or hurts. We'll see.
I think the Christmas markets, I got a good feeling about that for you, because that's when people love to spend their money. Even right now, even in an economic downturn, people spend their money, and they like to give gifts like coffee because it's something that can be used, and it creates an experience, But I want to come back to something you said way earlier that had triggered me thinking about how we treat the electricity bill or whatever. And my sister-in-law the other day said to me, stop. I was panicking about something. She goes, stop treating $2,000 as if it's $200,000. And I was like, oh my God, right? She's like, quit being so focused on the short game and put all of your energy and focus on the long game, because you're right where you said you wanted to be. And so are you, Travis. I mean, we're both right where we said we wanted to be.
Well, that's very true.
So how do we appease the fears and really focus in on that long game? I mean, we keep going, right?
There's one thing recently that I keep using as a tool, and it's very simple. I don't know if it's right or wrong, so to speak, but it's this. And maybe being middle-aged, you start to get a tiny bit older. Maybe you learn a lot. Maybe you learn you want to live your life by design. Great analogy. But picking up the coffee, what you just talked about, I just say, if you stick to your conditioning and your fears from when you were young, and you just keep going that path and you clamp down, you're not going to change anything. So take the risk, and it's either going to be a great learning experience and you might suffer a little bit, or you'll thrive. And you don't know if you don't do it.
That's right. I mean, what if it does work out? And what if it's something even better than you could have even imagined?
And it applies not only to financial business decisions, it applies to personal ones too,
It does. And look at you spending 2 weeks having freedom to hang out with your mom.
Yeah, it's unique. She's 70. This is her second battle with cancer right now. I don't know what's going to happen.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. She's in a really good way at the moment. Doctors say she won't go into remission again, but she's hit a nice, very sustained, happy valley at the moment. And it's just a matter of how long we can make that valley last. So I don't know what's going to happen next, but it's been very important to me the last year or so to get that time in.
It's about what matters most.
It is. Something else I wanted to say too. You talked about those, having those risks that you take that we just got done talking about. And I talked more about financial and business type risks. And I was hoping I could come up on the fly more with something that's a little more personal and heartfelt.
Please.
And deep. And I don't know if I have a great example right off the cuff, but it was pulling on me in my heart to think of one.
That.
And I can't pull one out of the air right at this moment, but I could feel it pulling on me,
Well, that's because you are a very caring and feeling individual. I mean, when I read your responses, you're craving a lot. You wrote that, you want to feel good about your values and your morals and not feeling like a number on the wall. And when you talked about that, there's so many people that feel like they're just a number. They're just, a cog in somebody else's giant wheel of corporations or organizations. I think you hit it, though. The more you describe your life, you talk about coming back to the senses. And that coffee in and of itself, and that's why I like coffee and savoring things like life. It's all about a sensory experience. It sounds to me like you've come back to that's a channel of creativity for you, and also a way of external validation when you're interacting with your clients, and your customers. Talk a little bit more about you and your life of sensory experience.
Oh gosh. Well, let's just start with the coffee. I get a unique experience that a lot of people just don't on the creator side of roasting coffee. And I think part of the draw is, so when you're roasting coffee, a lot of people may not know this, it cracks like popcorn, a little later on. Like there's what you call a first crack and a second crack. Most medium, lighter blonde beans are somewhere around first crack, and then darker ones like Vienna roasts and Italian roasts are usually second crack. So you have hearing, you have smell is a huge thing when you're roasting. You can smell caramelization, sweetness, or, carbonization, I call it, to tell where you're at, color, sight. All these things you need when you roast. And you cannot, even though most modern roasters have computers on them and you can see temperatures and things, you cannot be a good roaster and get a good product without using all your senses. I think that's really what drives it home for me.
That's
In my
really
life,
cool.
it
I don't know
is.
these things. I should come and see it actually in action. I've actually never been to a roastery before, not where I was there during the roasting process.
It's a trip. You should do it, especially considering the name of your podcast. You should
Okay.
definitely do it.
I know I'm a little behind the curve.
No, but I mean, again, how many people do you meet and know that have a roaster? There's just not that many.
That's true. And now I do. I did go in Costa Rica. I went to a coffee bean farm, and I'd never been to one. And it was fascinating. And the girl is like, all of a sudden, my driver took me there on the way to the airport. And he's like, hey, well, I got the perfect place for you. So we stopped, and I'm buying coffee from them. They're making me a coffee. And then they're like, come meet the roaster. I was like, what? So I'm following the girl, and we go into the back, and we're in the field of little trees and beans, and she's pointing, and I'm like, what the? So I was very excited. So anyway.
You're a step ahead. I mean, I've been to some Kona coffee bean plantations in Hawaii, but I've never taken, and maybe some years later as I grow, but I would love to go to some of my favorite places. So I get a lot of pictures and videos, but to what we know is life in America, especially a lot of us not being in agriculture of any kind. It's very manual. It's very a lot of heartfelt. Not a ton of machinery. A lot of by hand. It feels more natural. It's a very fulfilling experience. And again, I'm just going by what I see. Do want to touch more on the personal side of feeling and sensories as type stuff in my life. I'll use this time mark for myself being laid off. Extremely scary. You're either going to fight or flight from those kind of things, right? I started feeling and allowing myself to feel, pay attention to my body more. And I have made some personal decisions and some business decisions of this is what I want to do, or this is what I need to do. And if it's doesn't feel good, I've passed up on some income opportunities because it just wasn't right. It just didn't feel right. And, I don't want to say I've watched money go down the tubes kind of, but I have watched some because it just didn't feel right. So I've let myself, whether it's personal or business or life related, feel more,
Good for you.
I feel with my gut and my tears a lot. I do.
Yeah. If it doesn't, it's a new way of being for me too over the years. If it isn't a full body yes, I'm learning to say no.
There's a caveat. And this caveat I touched on. Is your conditioning, your fears influencing your gut?
Right. Is it, if it's not a full body yes, is it conditioning that's preventing me, that's limiting me from an opportunity?
Sure.
And, when I told you that, I was thinking, well, except for those 3 or 4 times because I had to overcome that limiting hesitation to your point. Yeah. That's a very good point.
Our extroversion and introversion and our relaxation and stress levels, they have a big pattern. They cross over, they go up and down, right? And so when we're more relaxed and we're more comfortable and more stable feeling, we might become a little more extroverted, or we might be a little more productive, or we might take some more risks to grow and do things. But that influences our gut. That influences our decisions. So I always, more so now than ever, let's see, Travis grew up in a very, 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 very lower middle class financial family with a mom and 3 kids, and money was never really there. Did we starve? No, my mom was wonderful. Somehow managed to put a roof over our heads and gave kids their first 3 cars. I don't know how she did it. Yeah. But there were nights where we had our meal and we were hungry by 8:30. And it was very scary. And only after college did I maybe get away from the teenage mentality, making friends with my parents. And I really understood how little she made and how much she balanced. Oh my God, I don't know how she did it. But that's conditioning for me.
Oh, yeah.
That's fear of money and stability, which I've touched on too much. And
it's real.
That influences my gut and my decisions. So I really have to work hard to check that.
I'm right there with you. I used to hear, my parents got divorced when I was 8, and I can remember lots of arguments and conversations about bounced checks and, sorry, dirty laundry here, mom, dad, brothers. But I mean, it was our reality. And I have this tendency to, I wouldn't say hoard, but I do stay stocked with basics as if I was some sort of, kid from the, the 40s.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like, I have a physical reaction to security. Like when I have detergent, I mean, this is so, when I open the cabinet for my laundry, detergent, softener, chloride, I mean, like, I'm like, okay, I have everything I need, or plenty of toilet paper. Like it's all these primary needs. I mean, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I have to work really hard on that too, to not feel the scarcity.
Yeah. It's like, I want to make sure I get my groceries a day or two before I run out of any basic things. It's just very similar,
I have 4 things of peanut butter in there. I'm like, why?
Because you might run out of peanut butter and celery. You just don't know.
I might. And apples. Apples and celery, they're just the medium. They're just the delivery system for my peanut butter.
God forbid you can't wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and stick your knife in the peanut butter jar if you need to,
I know. Right? We make light, but it is a serious block for a lot of people. I happen to do rapid transformational therapy work, which is a hypnotherapy approach to helping people overcome those subconscious beliefs. I'm curious, you talk about how you have to really work on that and focus on that. What are some of your practices, and have you ever done any work like that, like hypnotherapy or EMDR or any of that with your therapist?
EMDR, yes. Early on, it definitely made the tears flow as I released some things.
I bet.
The hypnotherapy, no. I just haven't crossed that bridge. How do you grow? You can't. You grow by reading, watching videos, which is similar to reading, meeting people that have different skill sets and training than you do. And you either identify with them or you don't, or you try to work them in, or you try to practice. It's uncomfortable at first. And you will not recognize a benefit right away. You may, in fact, feel a little more stress first.
For sure.
But,
that is for sure. I saw a girl, she commented, I made some sort of post on TikTok, and she commented, she goes, or I commented and she replied, and I said something like, therapy and coaching have really been a foundation for my life by design. And she said, yeah, well, that must be nice because those things cost money and not everybody has money. And I was like, well, that is true. But there are, to your point, I learn more watching Instagram videos and following people who are role modeling a life by design that I aspire to live like, and doing the work. And there's tons of free stuff. We have the world at our fingertips right now. So I was kind in my response, and I also sent her to my 10 free coaching sessions, which you can get on my website, which are totally just little videos to help you help yourself. I wouldn't want money to be in the way. I think you and I can actually relate to that more than most, because we haven't had a shit ton of cash to be able to go invest in all that. If I hadn't had good insurance in some cases, I wouldn't even have had the therapy that I had.
Well, Nicoa, I can't always say that, until I was this past year, I did quite fine my whole life. And
yeah,
I had stable health insurance and I had co-pays for, therapy, which we were touching on just now. Very, very fortunate. This year, yeah, definitely a change in balance for sure.
Take advantage of whatever you can. And I invite people to just look for the role models. Look for the people who are living the life that you aspire to live. And that works when you're an entrepreneur and you leave corporate like you and I have, whether you're forced to or you choose to. And, reach out to those people and ask them for what I tell my kids to do this all the time. I'm like, look, you want to go work at that company? Go find somebody that knows somebody that works there and just call them up and say, hey, would you mind a 30-minute informational interview where I just ask you questions?
Yeah.
And you've probably done that with your own business as a coffee, roaster.
Probably. Gosh, I was thinking more back because I was a hiring manager or a senior engineer, which, really helped with the hiring process. And I just think about all the coaching, mentoring, onboarding stuff that I've done through the years. Very similar, very interesting.
Tell me about your advice that you would give to somebody that either just lost their job and wants to do something different or is dreaming about it. Like you said, you wish you'd done it sooner. What are some of your takeaways and advice you'd like to leave behind today?
Well, I'm going to go with first how to handle the immediate. It's scary as hell. You, just like we talked about, you can just totally get overwhelmed with the freight train coming and look at the whole big picture and look at the gravity and just be scared to death, or you can chew it off one day at a time. Take 2 or 3 days on that first day. Allow yourself to crash. Allow yourself to curl up in bed if you want to. Go to the beach. Shut your brain off for a couple days. But man, force yourself to start building. Force yourself to pick up some tools or hit your keyboard or, go network. Just pick it off little by little. But don't stop moving afterwards and intentionally keeping a direction of picking up those tools, whether they're soft or hard or networking. Just keep moving.
Just keep going forward.
Keep moving. That's the biggest thing.
Have to hold that vision constant. And I would invite people to also visualize it literally. See yourself successful at the farmer's market or the Christmas market, right?
Yeah.
See people. And I used to do this after speaking engagement or before. I would imagine that if the speaking engagement was successful, I could visualize people coming up to me afterwards and shaking my hand and thanking me or saying, man, when you said ABC, that really hit home for me. And then typically 9 times out of 10, that actually happens. So we can actually put that creation out into the future. I mean, you and I created a reality by showing up here today. You're doing podcasts. We're announcing, Nicoa has a podcast. You're actually marketing your roastery. So we created this reality. Two people coming together with an idea, and here we are. So believe it. And like you said, just one little step at a time.
Yeah, and remember one other thing, too. This is for whoever listens and us, too. You're not alone. You talked about what do you do when you first decide to make the change, whether it's handed to you or you hand it to yourself. You are not alone. Embrace the fear, embrace the discomfort, and communicate with other people just a little bit about those discomforts, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to open back up to you and they're going to either share a similar experience or you may confide in someone and you may learn some things of how to handle or grow or be more successful. And you don't know but the thing is, you're not alone. Don't cramp up with that fear. Don't crawl into bed every day. Just don't do it.
That's right. And even if you are in the bed listening right now and you can't seem to get up, that's okay too. And as I said this morning on a post on my Instagram story, it's not that you go there. is how long do you stay there?
It is.
And if you're moving forward more often than laying on the couch, then you're making progress.
Yeah, that first day, Nicoa, go out to your mailbox and get the mail and go for a walk in your local park. That's the beginning of a challenge for one day, and it doesn't need to be more than that, but just try.
Do you ever find that when you do go take the long weekend, or you've taken a week off, or that you end up something positive happens while you're busy having a nice time? Like, I'll get a client. Like, I'll be on vacation, and I'm like, damn, I got a client while I was over here relaxing.
Sure. That just happened to me the other weekend. I decided I was going to take a weekend and kind of just have a leisurely weekend, and I went to bed Sunday night, woke up Monday morning with a $100 and something and $70 something internet order, and I'm like, okay, I didn't expect that. That works for me.
Exactly. That's the validation, man. And if you allow yourself to trust the journey, and you said it in the very beginning, it's about patience. Patience really is a virtue. It's been my hardest challenge to find myself in a new story. And that's what you're finding yourselves in. Everybody, if you want a new story, you got to write it every day. And if you are forced into a new story, you have to have faith that you're co-writing that story now. So here you are. What story do you want to, I say, start out like you want to finish, whatever that story is, and learn how to relax into it so that you can be open to receive. Doing all the time can block the receiving, or not asking for help, and I'm going to do it myself. That blocks the receiving. So to your point, you are not alone. And I'm so glad you said that.
You're not. And, I thought of something as you were talking, Nicoa. There is no right or wrong for any person about when they might need to, let's just, for an example, melt into bed. And it's okay. Like, that serves multiple purposes if you need to do that, after a divorce, after a loss, whether that loss is a person or a pet or your job. And there's fears, there's emotional healing, there's building back up. But it heals. It allows you time to process. It allows you time to cleanse. It serves a purpose. It's not wrong. But you just don't want to try to get stuck that way forever. So my personal experience with that is, do not throw the world at yourself the first day and first week when those things happen. Like I said, go get the mail, go to the park, go sit on the beach the next day. The momentum will probably build if you just do the little things.
That's right. Words of wisdom. I remember once crying with my first husband, panicking. And I said, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And because I didn't know what to do next about the business and this, that, and there. And he looked at me and he said, just get up and go back to your office and just keep going. Just keep doing the work. And that's the advice that you're saying. I mean, it's really sound advice. We're living a life, right? I mean, this isn't a means to an end. We're supposed to be having a good time. So when you're panicking, you're not having a good time.
No. And, interesting, I don't know why I thought of this, but sometimes every day you need little tiny separations, little tiny rests, little tiny breaks and recharges. And my little tiny things are a short walk, sit out in the sun. Sometimes I'll just do a little close my eyes on the sofa for 10 minutes. You've got to create those little rests, recharges, and separations, whether they're mental or emotional or energy separations. You've got to do them.
That's one of the hardest things for most of my clients is finding I call that's your flow. And you are responsible for those little interjections and those little pauses. So I'm really, I can tell your demeanor tells me that you do that. You're very grounded. Yeah,
but
I can tell.
I can have those days. Someone I dated for a while was a very wonderful person. She could tell, she got to know me enough where I could just have those supercharged, anxious, worry evenings, I'll call them. And that's when it's really helpful to have someone to lean on, because A lot of times somebody just needs to vent for a few sentences and get it out. And then you're reset and but everybody needs a little something. They really do.
Yeah, a safe third party, whether it's a best friend or a therapist or a coach, or, it could be a stranger sometimes at a coffee
Mm-hmm.
shop.
Mm-hmm.
I've found I've been the recipient of often, something about me tends to pull people in. And,
Mm-hmm.
you never know where you might be that for someone, or don't forget to allow others to be that for you, I think is really what you're saying.
There's some beauty in opening up to a complete stranger that you'll probably never see again because you generally have nothing to lose.
That's
If you
right.
have nothing to lose, why can't you treat that as a wisdom and venting session, maybe to some of the deepest things that you don't normally let out to the people that are close to you? You might learn from it.
I think we're moving into a more authentic way of being in the world. And I'm really, honestly, I'm really glad you're a guy, because what you're saying is not very commonly discussed by a lot of men. I think one female friend of mine joked, none of the men out there are doing the work. I said, you're wrong. There are a ton of men out there doing the work. And, women just had to do it faster in order to survive. We had to do it because we were told that we had to do everything. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the men were not told to do that. And they weren't actually raised to handle women like me, who were told to be over functioning and to not only be feminine, but also be the provider and blah, blah, blah. But men are doing it, and you are role modeling the fact that you've got to learn how to sit with your emotions. I mean, talk to me a little bit about your perspective on that.
Yeah. I try to do the work, and I do some work, and I do definitely listen when people give me the feedback and observations like you just did. It's very value added and heartfelt. Some days, Nicoa, I feel like I haven't done enough work. And then other days, it's very fulfilling to have someone give me that feedback because who am I? I'm just me. And where is my gauge of if I've done work, if I haven't done work, if I'm developed, if I'm not? I know I'm an emotional person and I do listen. That being said, I've developed self-awareness in later years. And so I do some work, but I'll tell you, there's other facets of my life where I just feel like I'm a broken record or I'm not comfortable enough and I don't go do the work.
That's pretty normal. I mean, we're
I
not.
think so.
First of all, you can't get it wrong. I mean, you're just having an experience. It's just an experience, man. We can't get this thing called life wrong. I just remember that. Mm-hmm. And I think we're born enough, and then we are supposed to, like the hero's journey, we're supposed to forget. We're supposed to be conditioned and brainwashed and overshadowed by marketing and, what the neighbor said or that one teacher. We're supposed to forget. And then around age 40, if not sooner, hopefully for people nowadays, you wake up and you go, wait, what the hell? What? Wait, why am I acting this way? And you're pretty unique in that you said, I know I'm an emotional being. Most people ignore that. They don't tap into their emotions. They think they need to be a thinking being, as a man thinketh, right? Which is true. But unless you tap into the emotion, you won't get over the hump. And you also said that you are self-aware enough to take the feedback. Now, you have to be self-aware to not be threatened by feedback. And coachability is what I hear you saying. And you seem very coachable, or that you've had to do enough work where feedback is something that you've been open to receiving. And I want to commend you for that.
That means a lot. I worked for a CEO, reported directly to him for some years, and he's very intentional with what he shared personally, and he did it behind very closed doors and very selective. And two things he told me. One is, if you don't listen to those around you and receive that and sit on it and reflect on it and look to make changes based on that, you're doing the wrong thing. And also, too, I found this very moving. It is okay to disagree with someone, but the venue that you take and the path that you take to do it is extremely important. Don't do it abruptly with an audience. Do it behind closed doors, but keep a level head while you're doing it. Because the destruction that follows if you do it with an audience is sometimes devastating.
And that takes self-awareness so that you're not allowing your nervous system to react, and you're conscious of your response.
That's
And
true.
great leaders and, sage, wise people understand that they are responsible for their response, right? Ability to respond, responsibility. And that's sage advice your boss gave you. And it's clearly influenced you. I admire you for taking his advice.
It has. I used to have a temper when I was younger. I was in the right with the topic that I blew up at the time when this advice came. However, I did it with an audience, and it's not very pretty. And I think I very quickly listened and changed how I channeled that moving forward.
Well, good for you. That, again, value in all. You had to go through that and embarrass that person or shame that person or whatever happened or that circumstance, or show your ass, as they say, right? And then you learn from it. You had to have had that experience in order for your boss to then give you that coaching moment. So if people can remember that, then they'll be a lot less embarrassed or ruminate about scenarios that might not have gone their way.
That's true.
I think that was good learning for you. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Well, look, look at us at the 1 hour mark. Thank you everybody for listening. If you're still with us, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Let me ask you one last question. I just really want to, I always try to ask this to my clients at the end of their calls. What do you want to celebrate the most, not only about yourself? So 2 things, celebrate the most about you, but also what do you want to celebrate most about this Life by Design that you have created?
I have to think on that answer. For myself is easy. I talked about it throughout, but I think the adventure and the feelings and the mini failures and mini successes, that's a beautiful thing to me. To share with others, I just want to go on that journey and find those genuine people that want to be on the receiving end and the camaraderie end and the exploration and curiosity and growth end through this Life by Design, which is so funny. I've thought about this, how you work things, because you definitely deep dive personal when you do this podcast, but you also centered around people's professional / business intertwining. It's very interesting, but I want to share all those things and experience all those things with people, and I want to do it from a beautiful direction rather than just a mechanically based reaction, if you will. And that's how I would like to grow and live my life by design moving forward.
Well, you just did. This conversation.
I have a long way to go, Nicoa.
Well, I celebrate you. I celebrate all of that. And it's funny, most of my clients have a more difficult time answering the one about themselves, and they're more easily about their lives. So I'm impressed, and I'm honored that you would spend time with us today. And I think that people like that boss of yours and the people that we run into in the coffee shops of the world, they're role modeling for us. And hopefully you and I are role modeling for a whole bunch of people today. And if you're listening, please take our role modeling and take what you like, edit what you need to edit and ignore what you don't like and move on. Just keep moving forward towards that Life by Design that you dream of. Where can we buy your coffee? Tell us where people can go online. We know that
Yeah, the easiest way is WILMINGTONCOFFEERoasters.com, all one word. That is the easiest way.
Okay.
Drop a line to me that you heard us on the podcast, and I'll knock off shipping for you if you're below the 75 free shipping. I do farmers market downtown Saturday mornings. It's the easiest, freshest, fastest way to get it from me right now.
Awesome. And Christmas market. By the time this thing airs, it'll be Christmas time probably. So
my birthday, November 30th.
November 30th. Okay.
Yes. There's 11 to 4 on Dock Street downtown is a holiday market. Music, good warm drinks, beautiful late fall, early winter fun. It should be fun. And also, the night before, there's a little mini market at the tree lighting ceremony, and I'll be there as well.
Oh, and where's the tree lighting ceremony?
Yeah, sure. At the between Water Street and Front Street on Market.
Okay, so, I know right where it is.
Yeah, our Christmas tree for town is right there.
Yeah, it's right there. I'm sorry, I don't leave the house much.
I don't anymore.
No.
Has to be intentional now.
Very intentional. Well, I'll put all of that information in the show notes, and I just want to thank you again. And by the time this airs, happy birthday and happy holidays and best of luck. I have no doubt that this is going to be a successful year for you, and that this is just the beginning of the something even better than you dreamed of. So I'm really excited for you, Travis.
That's inspiring words. Thank you, Nicoa.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Peace. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for a caffeinated conversation. Subscribe to Coffee with Nicoa for more stories from people living a life by design. You can also find inspiration on Instagram. Just follow Coffee with Nicoa. And check out our website, coffeewithnicoa.com. And that's Nicoa, Nicoa. We look forward to talking with you soon, and enjoy your coffee between now and then.
Guess what, y'all? I published a book. Your Life by Design, a Coffee with Nicoa self-care coaching journal, is now available on Amazon. This interactive journal begins and ends with powerful queries, guiding you on a quest for the kind of life by design you don't need a vacation from. I've included an in-depth look at strategic self-care to empower you and hold you accountable to really getting to know your true self. It's time to prioritize you. Use the link in the show notes to buy yours today.